Now the next thing is the when you use it over time. Now, if you guys have ever owned a knife that, like this cold steel tie light, for example, and even the military, and there's Loctite on the screws, and I don't know what that's about, because when you go to unscrew it, it just unscrews easily. Or you see that screw always loosen. Basically, these knives are not like solid like a titanium, two sides of titanium, where there's no, how you say, like movement on these slabs. These things are solid, rock solid. So when you put it all back together, the blade's centered because there's just no tension of anything of the two handles being pulled this way or that way, or one screw kind of pulling it around. The thing is, okay, if I'm here, the knife, when you talk about centering, normally you see on mine it's not like that, but you see on theirs, all the males are one side and all the females another because it looks nice. Okay, and I've switched mine around. And I do this because this just makes life easier. Because what happens is, there's all these tricks where people will tell you, if your blade's not centered, which is you tighten this down as tight as it can be. Because ultimately, why you do that is because you're going to loosen that to adjust the blade. And obviously, plus you don't want it super tight because then you can't open it. But you tighten it all the way, so that's like kind of like, okay, the thing that stays consistent. And what that does is now that applies pressure throughout the rest of the handle. Basically this end will start to poof up. What you go is you go down the handle now, and what they tell you to do is you push the blade towards the direction you want, and now kind of like twist the handle around, move the handle around, the two handle pieces. And this happens because, this is just stainless steel, two stainless steel liners and some G10. And you push it towards that direction, and then you start screwing down all the screws. And then hopefully what happens is, because if basically, how to explain this, but if basically it was tighter here, okay, if you push it down, this, it'll create between all the way down the handle, certain areas will now become more tighter or looser, and you can just, if you tighten it all down properly, and then finally untighten the pivot, it'll be centered, or at least more towards being centered. So, okay, regardless, what I'm trying to say now is this knife that's one of its not flaws, but that's what it is. That you have to realize it's some of its limits of how it was constructed. This knife is a liner lock with, if you saw the liner lock video, the limits of that liner lock and how durable that liner lock can be. So to me, this is like a sort of like a tactical light, like a survival light knife, but it can do it. You saw the batani. It can do these things, but in terms of like what it is, you see, Oromo has said one of his favorite knives is the R.J. Martin DRT, and for me, his knives are like Ferraris and Lamborghinis. They got all the trimmings, all the new features, and that make them sexy and smooth and all that good stuff. For me personally, though, I'm a little bit more old-fashioned. I like the basic, the simple old-fashioned stuff. I'm more likely to want to refurbish something or to take something old and classic that I know has some reliability to it, and I'll take the flaws with it, and even because of its simplicity, and its outdated design. And so what this means on this knife is you use it, especially with the batoning. There will be one day where this will start to twist and turn, and your blade will become uncentered. And so the trick is on this knife is you want tight to loose, and then of course tight. So what you're trying to do is, you put the knife in, you screw it all together, and you tighten this one down, preferably just pretty much all the way. And it's right next to a standoff, so it isn't gonna, okay. And regardless, and it has spacers, okay. And then you look at how it's centered, and as you go along, and this applies on the tie light too. You start to, this screw should be a little bit tighter, a little bit looser, sorry, than this one. And then this screw should be a little bit looser than this one. And what you're trying to ultimately do is adjust the tension, and that's why this screw always comes off on knives, new knives, because this one really affects the centering of the blade. And so that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get it to where it's just tight enough to where it opens up to the right, how you say, space, and then you tighten this one just enough to where it hopefully won't loosen too much, but it won't clamp down on the blade the handles and move the blade around. If I'm not making too much sense, you're gonna have to try what I'm talking about. What you're trying to get is obviously none of the screws to move around and slide around, but at the same time you're also trying to kind of like relieve the pressure of these screws up to this screw. Like you want, you know, this one not to be taking so much tight, like holding so much together that this one, you know, is now like not receiving any. You kind of want it to be a balance of kind of like the handle pulling apart little by little by little, and the screws kind of getting looser. I can't explain it any other way. Because then the reason why I switched mine over is, you know, since it pulls this way, all these screws on this side, it's going to pull naturally that way. And so what I did is then I switched this male and female around so that when I tighten mine, it'll pull that direction. And mine's not centered right now because I have to take it apart right now. Because as you tighten these two screws, it really affects this one, the centering. So that's what I'm saying. You want to kind of reach a point of centering that you like, and then slowly tighten up the handle without affecting that. You know, without applying more pressure on the handles to kind of pull the blade around. Basically, if you screw too tight, you know, it'll squeeze in some direction, you know, and it'll move the blade. I mean, because that's basically what you can do if you were to, like, you know, if you were to push and pull the top part, like kind of slide them like this, or, you know, to twist it like this, you know, it can move things around. And that's basically what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to get a balance. But regardless, that's something, you know, bear in mind. This screw near the pivot is going to need Teflon tape, and so is the one, or Loctite, and so is the one right here, the pivot. So these two are the ones you primarily have to worry about. This one's the loosest, and this one can come loose. These, not so bad. But that's one of the things you have to be aware of. So you're going to have to, well, if you want to Loctite it, that'll make it permanent. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But these are small screws, and I don't suggest Loctiting small screws because then that can, you know, you can strip them when you try to take the Loctite off. I suggest just using Teflon tape. And if you're going to use the knife, if you saw in previous portion 2, you know, you need to have some Teflon tape on this pivot so that it doesn't, you know, keep loosening. And you need a tool with this knife to maintain it, or to just keep kind of readjusting it. And you'll get the skill to just kind of tweak it and twist it until finally, you know, you got the right tension on the pivot and the right, you know, amount. And also bear in mind that since there's no space on the stop pin, you can keep tightening until this top part starts to bend together. So, you know, try not to do that too. Bear in mind that. Now, in terms of deployment, I like this knife because, correct, it has all the Spyderco, you know, all the versatility of a Spyderco. You know, you can shake it open, you can wave it open. I mean, it just offers so much tactical, quick deployment, ease of deployment. I mean, I'm a big tool steel S&G fan, you know, but this one offers more reach. This one offers a little bit more refinement, you know, a little bit less, a little more compact, lightweight, and these are all features that make it really good. Now, and one more thing about the tolerances. You know, again, what makes this knife so great. Okay, I'm gonna tighten this pivot down just in case, you know, well, you can. You have to just, you're gonna have to just believe me on this, okay? Now, let's see if I flick it easily, right? Watch. Open it, right? Do you see? Okay. Can you see where the lock bar landed? Okay? Now this time if I give it a... See how much more it was in? Because the tolerances, you know, that pin, even though it's shouldered, it's not machined as perfect as it could be, so when that impact hits it, see, this US made pin, you know, vibrates just enough to allow more movement here. Now, the Lum Tanto, you see where it sits? If I give it a, you see? It's just solid. And like I said, as this pin keeps receiving those impacts, if you want to practice, you know, doing some flicks and stuff, that, you know, you can switch that female for any of these females here, and some of them, now that may not be machined as equal, because one of these pins I put up here in the lockup locks a bit later. Right now it's locking up earlier, but you can move that around. So overall, and so what makes it kind of a custom knife design too is that all these screws, except for the pivot, including the pocket clip, are all the same size males. And of course then all the females that you don't see because they're inside these spacers are the same as the stop pin. So what that means is, I don't know, if you were to damage your stop pin, wear it out from flicking it hard all the time, or doing some kind of cutting task and always applying positive pressure, you can always switch that stop pin for one of these. These are all interchangeable. If you strip one of these screws, you just go ahead, take one pot clip one, switch it around, no big deal. It's very nice in terms of how it's designed. And then you compare, and why I chose this because this is for me, I'm trying to choose one custom, one production, semi-production at least knife out of my top three. I want some variety, and so when you look at the price points of these two, Chris Reeve Tanto Zan. This is my Tanto Zan because Tantos are cool, and you have this one, what you're paying for, you get a lot of value out of this. And personally, I like this knife, and it's hard to say which one I like better, But it was all the tactical aspects of how I can flick it open, all the different ways I can open it. It's how it's ambidextrous. That makes me choose it over an Zan. Weight, if it matters, yeah, this is lighter, but it was mostly the versatility of this one. The fact that I can have a good, if I wanted to put a lanyard around my wrist right here, if I wanted to use the open construction to attach it to something like make a spear out of it. If I wanted to baton with it, do light prying with it, to just cooking, it just does so many different things. I can reprofile two different blade edges, and reprofiling this blade is simpler because it's just, compared to the it's just one flat top edge, just that main tip, that first grind, and then that little smaller section right there that creates the tip. It's not so hard to do on a flat rod. And the stainless steel liner, the presentation side it has some milling to skeletonize to lighten the weight, while the lock side is not messed with. So overall, I don't see balance of it. Yeah, it's pretty good, it's just a really great knife. If I had to have one knife, if I was backpacking or in a situation of self-defense, do I trust this one? Yeah, I trust this knife. This is a knife that I really like. Thanks to Armoto for suggesting it to me. I had looked at it, and really, at first, when you see it, it may seem kind of just sterile, plain. But as you use it, maybe just because those little notches just kind of change the profile a little bit. It just grows on you to where you can just kind of it just looks better. You can see mine's all dirty, but it just starts to grow on you, and you start to see its pros. And it takes a little bit of time. I definitely say you'd have to kind of use it for a little while, and then you'll know that it's just really one of the best knives out there. It's definitely not the most ultimate knife, but in terms of what you're getting, between the size, the value, the manufacturing, the design aspects, everything combined, it's an awesome knife. And this is one of my top 3 favorite. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And quick note, Teflon washers are listed as self-lubricating, so you don't really need lubrication in order for a Teflon washer to continue working. Of course it helps and it becomes super smooth when you do, but without it, it'll still work.